Okay, so this session is going to be outside the lines, and it's going to demonstrate some creative ways to extend the capabilities of frame-based patterns, as well as a demonstration from Kiyoshi on how to use Visual Studio Code and Git from CA Plex. So our two speakers, myself, Roger Griffith. My role is I'm the Director of Software Development for Eagle Systems Products. They're based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm also the current president of the Plex 2E worldwide user community. And our second speaker today is going to be Kiyoshi Terasawa, and he is the software architect working for CM First. We have a whole lot of CM First speakers at this conference, so getting a lot of great information. So a little bit about myself there. At Eagleton Systems Products, we use the frame-based patterns quite heavily. We have a lot of code that was originally developed in OBase. That code, the vast majority of what we have was written in OBase long before patterns came along, and so a lot of that code was basically, your traditional OBase stuff, but we wanted to modernize it and be able to give it a more modern look and feel. And frames are really a solution to giving your software a much more modern look and feel. So I'm going to show you how we took and extended OBase so that it runs in frames as tabs and wizards and that type of thing. So I'm going to show you some solutions on how to do that, as well as some just kind of other things that you need to consider when you're using frame-based patterns. So let's talk a little bit about some of the weaknesses of frame-based patterns as we get them out of the box. One of the kind of challenges we have is that the existence of tabs and the label that displays on the tab is really defined at design time. And so sometimes we need the capability of manipulating the text that's on a tab at runtime. And there's also going to be many instances where at runtime, we want to exclude some tabs. So let's say maybe your properties function comprises 10 different tabs, but for a particular user at runtime, we don't want them to have all 10 tabs, maybe based on permissions and this type of thing. We only want to give them 7 of the tabs. So I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use to at runtime kind of manipulate which tabs that the user gets. And the other thing, as I mentioned, is that we have a significant amount of our code which was developed in OBase, and OBase was written long before these frame patterns came along, and OBase out of the box does not provide any ability to extend those functions in a tab. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can extend your OBase standards layer so that those functions run in a frame, and you can interact with those just like any pattern frame function. And so really what allows you to do is if you have an application, maybe that's a combination of OBase and patterns, you can extend the OBase functions so that for a particular application, your properties function, some of the tabs are OBase, some of the tabs are coming from patterns, and it's seamless to the user. They can't tell that you've got a mixture of OBase and patterns in your application. Okay, so let's talk about some reasons that you might want to manipulate the label, the text that is on the tab at runtime. So the name triple controls what the text is going to be of your label. And so the name is defined at design time. And one of the challenges that we always run up against is that no two functions can have the same name triple. So for example, you might have one function that has a name triple of customer notes and another function that has a name triple of vendor notes. But regardless of which one you're doing from which part of your application, you just want that tab to say notes. So, I mean, ideally, we would be able to put a name triple of notes on the customer function and a name triple of notes on the vendor function, but because of the fact that that would be duplication and Plex will not allow it. So you've got to manipulate the text of that of your tabs at runtime. Another thing to keep into consideration is that the width of the text of your labels defines how wide the tab is. So ideally, you want to keep the width of your tabs narrow so that you can put as many tabs as possible in one row. But if your tab labels are too verbose, what happens is that you might only be able to display 5 tabs in a row, which causes you to have 2 rows, and that certainly works. We do it all the time, but it's much more user friendly if you have fewer rows of tabs. So just kind of a simple solution for how to manipulate the label of a tab at runtime is to start with, look at your labels are defined based on your option names. So in this particular example, I've got my CIF properties function. It scopes a scripts, and the scripts has 2 option names, one called CIF and one called CIF enrollment. But at runtime, I don't want the text for the CIF enrollment to say CIF enrollment. I might want it to just say enrollment. So the way I do it is I create a work field called ES_tab text, which is a tab text, and then I give it some values. So I give it values of everything that I want to replace, as well as what I want it to replace with. So for example, the values I have CIF enrollment, that's what I'm going to search for. So that's the one above where I've got the option name of CIF enrollment. And then I have a value of just enrollment. That's what I want to replace it with. Okay, so in my code, I come along here and in the pre-point there, in tab strip add tab is where I basically go along and I search for the tabs where I want to replace the text. And then within that, I have the value that I want to replace it with. So the other thing to mention is that because we're basically wanting to circumvent the code that we inherit, the way we do that is we do the undefined of the plus subroutine meta variable. So I come along and undefine that, which causes the inherited code to be bypassed. So it doesn't include that code. Then I come along at the end of that and I do my replacement. So I check the tabs where I want to replace text with and do my replacement. And then at the very end there, I do my API call to add tab. And where I do that on the tab, I supply the tab text that I've used for my replacement. So that's just kind of a simple technique to go through and at runtime replace text of your tabs. Another thing that you typically might want to do with frame patterns is have better control over which tabs load at runtime. So basically what happens is at design time, you take your properties function, for example, and it comprises, let's say, 10 different functions. So the 10 functions, that's going to be the tabs that the user would see at runtime. But what we want to do is we want to exclude some tabs at runtime for a particular user, maybe based on permissions and this type of thing. So for a variety of reasons, you might want to say that for a particular user, they don't have all of the tabs, typically because of maybe their role. So like an administrative person might have all the tabs, but other users might only have a subset of those tabs. Okay, so the properties function, it loads these tabs up and it uses indexes to interact with the tabs. The technique that we use is that we basically reassign the indexes as it's loading the tabs. Okay, there's other ways that you can do this, but this will allow you to exclude one or more tabs from the user interface at runtime. So here's just some examples of how we do it. So what I do is I have an array that I create local variable, and it's called tab functions L. It's defined with 100 occurrences. It could be more or less. We just picked 100 because we figured that 100 we would never have more than 100 tabs in our properties function. So anyway, it's basically just got two fields. It's got ES tab, and ES tab simply is a tab, and it allows me to basically have the original tab as well as kind of the reassigned tabs. Okay, so at initialization, you're going to go through and iterate through those 100 occurrences and blank all of that out. And a lot of the code, I don't necessarily show you all of the stuff, but I will include a document with this presentation that has all of the fields and this type of thing. So basically what we do here at the subroutine called tab strip add tab is up at the top of this thing in the post point, there's a field which is called load child, and it's just a true false field. And we start off with, we set it equal to true. The next thing we do is we send it into a subroutine that checks to see if the tab is going to be loaded. So the code that's within that is kind of just how we're currently checking. And basically what we do is when a function is running, we know the user who's running that function, and we also know permissions and this type of thing. So in this particular case, what I do is I'm checking some global variables to determine whether or not that particular user should have that particular feature. And so when it gets in, it's checking, it says, okay, it's trying to load a function that has a name of val plans. So within that particular function, before it loads it, it checks to see whether or not they should have that feature. And if it's yes, they should have it, then it sets the load child equal to true. It's really kind of not necessary because it defaulted it to true before it even sent it into the subroutine. But just for clarity, sets equal to true. If they should not have that particular option, it sets that flag equal to false. So the next thing it does is after it sends it into that subroutine, it comes along and says, is that flag equal to true? And if it is, it loads the tab and loads the tab functions_l array accordingly. Okay. The next thing it does is there's a few other subroutines where you basically we undefine the subroutine to basically bypass the inherited code, and then it goes into the new code. And basically what it does is the only real difference is it's using the reassigned tabs to interact with. So both for change child as well as process tab change, etc. So the end result of that is that at runtime, it allows you to have control over which tabs are loaded that the user has access to. So the next thing we're going to look at here is some techniques that you can use to extend O-based functions as frame-based functions. So you'll want to do this in your standards model. And so here's just a couple of places where we've done it. So we've got a standard entity called the old user maintained entity. We've also got a standard called entity with tab dialog. These are just a couple places that we've done that. And in that standard entity, we come along and we say that we have, for example, a maintenance UI child, which is going to extend the maintenance UI to run as a frame. And then we come along in the standard entity with tab dialog, and we create a function called tab dialog edit child, which inherits from tab dialog edit, but it specializes it to run as a frame. So basically, define those in your standards model. So here's just an example. Typically, when after you've created this, you can use, copy and paste to copy stuff that's in the patterns library to copy all those triples over into your O-based function. So for example, if we look at the maintenance UI child function, it inherits from maintenance UI, and then it's got all these local variables and fields that specialize it so that this function has all of the properties and functionality to run as a frame. So you add those triples, you go into its panel, add 3 events: hide, release control, and show. You change the window type for that panel to child panel. And then you start copy and pasting all of the subroutines that you need. And you get these subroutines from patterns. So you go into the pattern functions and you just simply copy and paste all the subroutines into your obase child function. Add code for the process, the events that you added to your panel. And here's just an example where I've got a properties function, and it comprises a mixture of obase functions as well as pattern functions. So here's just some kind of examples here. So here's some, this is an obase tab dialog edit. It's running as a frame. It's good old obase, but it's integrated with the rest of the functions, which are pattern functions. So here's a function here. There again, it's just an obase maintenance UI. And then here's another tab, which is a pattern function. So it allows you to really integrate obase with patterns very nicely and use obase in more modern ways. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Kiyoshi to talk about CA Plex with Visual Studio Code and Git. Take it away, Kiyoshi.
Yep, thank you, Roger. Okay. You see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is probably not directly related to Plex application, but little experimental things I'm kind of doing. But just combine with the Plex and well, VS Code is just an IDE of a code, or it's kind of nice version of a text editor, you could say, but it has a lot of extension you can inject. I mean, one of the extension is a Git extension. So I'm gonna after the presentation, I'm gonna show some live action. But what I'm kind of trying to do here is just locally just see you make changes, Plex model, generate build a file changes, etc. And then it's all just let the Git all recorded for you, and then just you can experiment in something. Well, you don't like it, you just can scratch it. I mean, without copy paste, moving around, etc. So everything back to the previous stage. So this is done completely on your local PC. It's not connecting to the remote main kind of repository. That's kind of Git allow to do. Okay. So yeah, Visual Studio Code. So that's free from Microsoft, and it's not the same as Visual Studio. So it's free and it runs Linux, Mac, Windows, whatever. But of course, Plex restrict you Windows, but it's very widely used. So lots of extension available, and one quick one, easy you get is source code keyword highlight. So I mean, the Plex, you can switch the source code viewer from the option. I don't know how many doing that or not. I mean, you could change to Notepad, or you could change, like this guy. It's either your generated source code way uh, nicer. I think can show. So like this. So it's all kind of highlighted like a standard way to the like a programmer see. Um, okay, so that's kind of provided. So just to simply, even nothing, just to change to the source code viewer is help to visualize the Plex generated source code nicely. I mean, like, yeah, you can do from right click and view source. and you just select it, and it's come to here. So it's open. So that's one. Um, and then the Git. So Git is kind of you heard a lot. It's kind of a source code management, source file management system. Lots of people using uh, privately or publicly. And you have heard about GitHub. People mention it always like if you go to the certain uh, session or presentation, everyone pointed to the get this code from GitHub. So basically, GitHub is kind of repository hosting service for the Git. So it's kind of organized. I think Microsoft purchased them, I think, recently. So it's part of Microsoft, I remember. I may be wrong, but so that's kind of different. So Git is actual engine to manage source code, and GitHub is kind of hosting service. Okay, so just a little bit. So Git does what the traditional version control does, of course, but in addition, it has some unique capability. So I'm sure you using like I don't know Subversion or Visual Source Safe or I forgot. I mean, lots of traditional source controller. And what it does typically was so each developer get the source base from a central repository, so which normally exists in your shared server. And each one of you or each one of the developer just get checkout of a demo term. So you get the image of the source kind of cloning, um, you know, each of them. And then each developer kind of committing your changes to the repository. So that's kind of straight. And the point is you commit file by file. So you never, so that's kind of point. So the traditional one, you commit to the share directory as well as you commit file by file. So it doesn't care the other file, etc. So you maybe break things in theory. I mean build fail, etc. Um, so the Git has kind of additional layer. So I steal someone from the website, but so Git has a remote repository concept. That's still same, but also have a local repository concept. So local repository is almost what the traditional software, I mean source code management does. So you have make changes, and then you commit to your still local repository only. So you don't care the remote or central repository at this point. So that's why, I mean, it's called distributed. So you get the clone once and you can work for a long time without, without network, by the way. You can work in the forest. And then when actually it's called push, and it's not commit, but when you upload or push your changes, you kind of pushing all the repository image to the remote. So of course there will be conflict, etc. That same thing, but it's really protecting you push up to your stuff to your entire thing, not the 5x5 thing, so to the remote. So that time, if you can compile here, and then if you resolve the conflict, of course, conflict is resolved here before you push. So you're kind of guaranteed you're kind of committing safer stuff. So, but for today, I'm not using remote. I just using just this red square one, just the local environment, which still does the job kind of you want. And of course, you decide it, you can create a remote repository based on the your local repository too. Yeah. Okay, so Plex, yeah, Plex is a local model and build file, that's the main one, and then output build source and object. That's what the Plex does. And in the, just to say, Plex model is not a model, it's file. It's just a file, binary file. Of course, you can see what's changed because it's binary, it's like an image, right? So, but it's still file. And then build file is text, and the source code is text, etc. So, of course, the Git can track what you're doing, what you're making change. Okay. So, well, I go to maybe little short demo here. Okay. So okay, so I close everything. So this is kind of a directory I am monitoring. So this is actually Explorer. So I'm monitoring this entire folder using Git. Okay, so here currently no change made, but you could see that what it means. Okay, so I back to Plex. Where's the Plex? Okay, so let's say I open the gen build option. Well, I don't know, maybe I change include comment in source code. Okay, if I click OK, yeah, okay, so you see the build file is updated. That's why it's up here the change. And if I double click it, and actually this line is inserted by changing it. So it's kind of good running as well. I mean, okay, so is this is maybe not. Okay. You say it's very strange. Okay. It seems that generator include comment in source, right? I check. I don't know. Okay. Or maybe some option maybe go to the Plex init. Maybe that's why. Okay. Okay, I see some changes here. So okay, so generate usage 341 is there. So kind of you can run what's the build setting is corresponding to the build file as well. And sometimes it's go to ini file, but yeah, the most time it's come to build file. So well, that's one. So let's say if I am gen build, so I just let generate, regenerate to whatever. So I generate some more file. Okay, I just generate the Java code. And now it's detected. So these files are kind of generated, and then some is modified because I had a pre-generated, and then some are new. But if you double click this, and then you see the different timestamp, and there were some differences. It's very interesting because I put the comment, so that's why you see the comment. But anyway, so these kind of thing is kind of automatically appear. And of course, if you change the model, what about the narrative? Maybe if I save local model, I think it should come up. Takes time. Okay, so model is also good. Sorry. Sorry, alarm clocks all of a sudden. Okay, so these are all kind of tracked, and so if I mean, I'm doing some prototyping, etc. Then I reach the point, generate build. You can build too, but yeah, I don't do build today. Then, well, you decided, well, this is not something I like. So, well, then one thing you need to do is just need to close the model. But then there's an option for the discard all changes. And if you do that, so it's kind of gone. And if I reopen the same model, of course, the things I did, like adding narrative is gone, and also yeah, general build option I put for these generate usage, throughput, etc. is gone. Well, this one looks like saved to the ini file, and all the source code I generated also gone, and just back to the previous stage. So I don't know, it's a very real usable, but this is done locally without remote repository, and this setup needs some effort, but it's very straight, and it could run. Actually, source is changed by your new changes without going to Windy for Win merge or whatever. And of course, to do the compare the source, you need to like have a switch the gen folder, gen and gen X, and you do compare, and then that kind of thing. But you can see these just instantly, and it's probably very kind of quick help to. Even you don't just do the prototype, you can just using this always monitoring things. I mean, you can just see that what you made a change in the source. So that's very quickly visible. Okay. And yeah, well, I think I finished, but yeah, we have more time, so should do something.
Sorry, I know you can't see the chat when you're presenting. Andrew has a question about how much space the local Git repository would take up on your machine.
Well, it depends, of course, your file, I think. I mean, the amount of source, the amount of stuff. It's just a.
I mean,
for example, I don't think I don't think they copied everything as the versions. Like they only manage the differences, I bet. So it's not, you don't have like a 3 local model full size of thing. They just manage the differences, I believe. And source code too. So
yeah, I'm thinking I've got like a SSD which has not a lot of space. Is it possible to have the Git repository on? I've got a bigger drive. Could I do that, or does it have to be within the actual working folder?
Well, that's I never think about the point. Well, you can have on the remote, I mean, attached to drive, surely.
But that would have to be your working folder.
Yes, because the Git repository stores all of its meta information, the past versions, the future informations, in a hidden directory at the top level.
Right.
Just to give you an idea of size, Andrew, like I have a Git repository where the workspace itself, like all the files are together like 400 megs, and my Git repository takes up about 30 megs. So I mean, it's
Right,
much, because like the way Subversion works is it has like a bunch of hidden SQL tables actually in the background, and like all your changes actually can get exponentially bigger if you keep going for a long time, especially with local working copies. Git seems to be a lot better than that.
Yeah, I'm interested in using it. I just know I generate a lot of files.
Like this guy here, so
Okay.
git ignore. So this is the file you define something you want to ignore, you want to include. So like for instance, like you don't care the object to build. So, or I mean, like, sorry, I should have some example. So if I say, okay, well, I shouldn't do this, but if I do this, and this guy decided not to monitor the file I generate. So if I regenerate, well, sorry, I regenerate, well, doing, I regenerate the things, and it stopped monitoring. Oh, sorry, my definition is not right. Gen source. No,
Can you share your screen, Kiyoshi?
I'm not sharing.
No, I see it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
can see it.
there it is. Okay, sorry, my bad.
If you add stuff to git ignore, once stuff already exists, you have to kind of clean it out. I found.
This guy kind of smart enough to do, but okay, yeah, that's maybe. But I think yeah, the point is yeah, it's just you don't need to track everything, and the git size, yeah, it's not crazy. Of course, if you track the Plex local model, little unusual size git maybe need to track, but other than that, yeah, it's a
You might also want to track the group model if you're thinking about it from a backup sense. There's another question from Kiyoshi if you're ready for it.
Okay.
So there's questions about like what's the benefit on using Git for generated source files? Because the idea being if you ever need to roll back, you could just regenerate from Plex. If you want to take that one, or one of us can take it too.
Well, I think the benefit could be diff body, so it's easy. It doesn't need to be Git, but it's easy to see what you made a change and then see the like a source code level. Sometime you want to confirm, etc. And also, if you are your company is actually physically managing the source code with source code management, then Git or Subversion, it's eventually it's same thing, but you have opportunity on the local layer to do something with Git more flexible. So, and yeah, group model and local model is a little tricky. I haven't think really deeply how to protect everything, but like it says, group model can be like each time branch, new branch, and then commit as whole branch as repository rather than file by file. So it's probably less chance to break like a kind of a conflict situation. So this group model commit contain the 3 of change, but to forget the 1. That's probably never happen because you kind of dealing it. So the group model may be friendly if establish the process. I haven't think too much detail, but
yeah, pessimistic locking is kind of important if you want to do like group models with Subversion, and I believe Git has it as well, where if you are doing something, you basically lock all the objects where no one can commit when you're committing as well. To touch on the source generation and why you would want to do that, one thing that really, like for a real world example, like we created like DevOps processes for clients where they have a source repository, and that is basically like the source of truth of their entire application. And so as they do more production deployments, they update that. And so if they ever need to generate a new like archive file or WAR to deploy, they just kick off the process. It pulls down what's in the repository and goes from there. And I've also found that sometimes because of the way Plex tracks action diagram changes, because you can look at the dates and like block information and stuff like that, but if things get removed, sometimes it's very difficult to find those things if you're not versioning properly within your model. So being able to compare the source to previous source is just, you basically have an exact representation of what changed. If the change was in metacode, for example, that's very difficult to track. So being able to compare source code from one version to another, I found just really helpful. Sorry.
Yep, thank you. And yeah, also maybe be able to show. So the other one is you can see the history of Git. So right now, like two branches exist, master and branch one. And so this is kind of a, yeah, it's branch. So I don't see any other way to say. But so this is right now branch one. I'm seeing this gen new function, etc. But of course, you can switch to the master. Okay, so now your stage is back to this point, and so you don't see that these two changes. And if you, this could be very useful to the group model, because you maybe just bring up a group model to that previous stage very easily managed way. I mean, of course, you can add tag too, so you can really get a snapshot for that moment, etc. But yeah, it's really up to what you want to control. So Plex generated source, some company does, some company doesn't, but you know, it's always safe to have source code. At least if you have source code, you can build. Even application is kind of dead. So yeah, comparing daily work, that's really just a quick, handy, available thing, and you can roll back, you know, etc. very easily. And if you like well, that's tiny thing, but if you roll back a gem, I mean a source code, point to the different location, etc. But you probably never roll back the build file setting, so it's auto naming its count up. So it's kind of reallocated a new name from I mean those. Then there's a big gap exists if you do that. So, but also it's good running. What change makes what change, and then if you could do the same for the C++, you'd be too scared because the C++ doesn't generate the source code constant way. So it's really different every time. Probably same for RPZ. So that's a little scare, but that's the way it's working. So yeah, but I think good running and yeah, just to track what you changing, etc. And then your changes reflected in source, you know, especially like yeah, during meta, etc. You don't see anything. So you see at runtime, but if you don't see the source code change generated, then that's pretty obvious rather than testing at the runtime. So just an additional layer. And also, it doesn't hurt using Git for any other part of your company as well. So that's good.
Thank you, Kiyoshi.
Yep. Okay.
Any other comments or thoughts from the folks? One thing I wanted to mention is that Jeremy mentioned to me that when it comes to the technique for dynamically excluding a tab at runtime, he's got some other ways that they're doing it. And I asked him if he would provide some documentation on that. So when we do the final upload of the presentations, I will include a document that I get from him that shows you some alternative ways of doing that. So a lot of different solutions. So it's always good to have different perspectives of ways to do it and implement the one that works best for you. So we'll make sure that we provide that with the final upload after the conference. Any other comments or anything, or is it time to wrap this session up? And we have 15 minutes to take a bio break, and we'll get together in another 15 minutes for the next session. Thank you, everybody.
Is the next session out? Is not in the breakout room. We'd have to
Yeah,
leave
I think
this
we need to
room.
leave the breakout rooms.
Okay.
But we can hang out in here till then if you wanted
Yeah.
to.
Absolutely.
I will say this, VS Code is fantastic. If you have any reason to edit JavaScript or Java, I mean, like it's wonderful. It's basically changed my development completely ever since I started using it. So
Wow.
it really is. I like
Okay.
JavaScript is just infinitely easier. Like it's just so much better.
I thought you are the Eclipse side. Yeah.
No. I use Eclipse for web client and stuff, but if I'm just writing Java, I'll just do it in VS Code now.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Maybe I'll learn some C# too.
I have a question. I'm starting to delve into the C#, okay? And using Visual Studio. I have Visual Studio 2017. Does it current CA Plex support the Visual Studio 2019?
Support means what kind of term. So I think for .NET, basically build is used by MS Build engine, not using Visual Studio, right? So the build should do whatever you configure, your system point to the what MS Build. And .NET framework itself is kind of same things like a 4.0. So it's currently, I think, 4.6, whatever, 4.7 something, but it's still, you can compare it same way. And when you mean the supporting Visual Studio means you want to open the project, you want to debug, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. And in fact, I'm still trying to learn that. Because it's a multi-model. In other words, I have a model that has libraries, so it's multi-model, and now I haven't jumped the hump yet of being able to debug. And in other words, I need to open up the project in Visual Studio, and and I think I need to add some things to the solution to be able to run the debug or something. So I'm probably going to need some help with that, but that's another subject, I know.
Yeah, that's kind of, probably I demo maybe 5 years ago or something maybe, but I think, it's durable. And once you lock the solution by your side and then adding project, then keep it. And I think like that C++ project, it's just open with a newer version, then they just take care of the upgrade, etc. And so I don't see the reason, you couldn't debug with like a latest 2019 or 17 or
Right.
Vodcom never say officially, supporting that because it's but I think
I was thinking probably checking with CM first to see if you know, obviously a paid
startup
course in using Visual Studio and to debug this C#. That's one thing, and that I want to check with CM first. And the other thing also is has anyone done because I did it in C++, but C#, that's a whole new thing. Dynamic menu. In other words, I took what I was doing is I was taking the tree view. Well, I was adding to the select menu item. I was adding dynamically, the nodes. All right, based on a file, and then and so basically that was like the menu with sub menus. Yeah, I don't know how to do that in C#. It used to work in C++ for me beautifully, but with the C# and the model APIs or whatever, I just can't figure it out. So and what I was doing is I was creating that, and then when the user clicked on it on one of those nodes, it will call the C++ DLL function with C#. Don't even I don't even know how to be able to call a function. So if anyone has figured out something like this,
Okay.
I appreciate the help.
I saw that you'd posted the question in the forums or wherever. I haven't done much C#, but I was hoping someone else who had would have chimed in to help.
Oh, you noticed that in the Broadcom forum.
Yeah.
Not worked with menus directly, but use like the tree control. That's quite useful for that sort of thing, for dynamically adding items and using it as a way of calling other things. I know worked with quite a few systems that do that.
Oh, okay, Andrew. In fact, that was my next approach. Instead of building these nodes in the menu item on top on the tab, now my next approach was just build a function based on the tree view, and then when they select, they're called the function. So
Yep.
you have there's somebody already has done that in C#.
I can't say for C#, but basically the patterns all have in the active library. There's the tree view control, and it has like subroutines for adding a node, adding a child node,
yes,
and getting the tags and stuff for those. So I've done it in Java. I haven't had much opportunity in .NET, but yeah, it's definitely possible.
I need to be careful, but I remember convert active for tree to .NET. So that should be there, but I will spend time for a long time. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Andy McKinnell, I don't know if you're on here right now, but I think, do you have a .NET tree view menu? So,
yes, we have that.
So yeah, so that's just using the active pattern for the tree.
In fact, I'm using it to build the database for these menu items. Okay, which I did in C++. So I did. So now I have, in C#. What I need now is a tree view, which is sort of like a show tree view, something like that. That when they click on it, it will call the function.
Yep, that's quite common. Yeah, so I've done that for Java, and basically the actual call is just modified from however Plex calls. So it doesn't. Well, the systems I've worked on, they don't have input parameters when they're called from the menu, because that's a extra complication. But if you're just calling a function, you just have the implementation name, then I think I just looked at what Plex was generating and then just had a parameter to insert the implementation name and yeah, just a source code object to call it.
That is what I need, because I can't find that in the CA help. What is the source code? So I can pass the implementation name and call the function, the C# function.
Right, yeah. So, well, with C#, you'll need the package and the implementation name. And for one of the systems I worked on, we had a standard that everything that gets called from the menu is in a menu package. So, so that's just a kind of more or less hard-coded value, and then we just need the implementation name. But I just pulled the code from the generated code. So if you look at your generated C#, look at any call statement, see what it generates, and then just plug in your implementation name from there and make it a source code object.
Okay, okay. I'll look at that, at the actual call statement.
So call one of the functions from a simple test panel and then view the generate it and view the source code. And you can then probably see where to add the change it for parameters and just cut out those few lines from your test panel and make that a source object.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a method of get input and also full scope package structure through the meta tools. You can combine the full name as well. Just the name doesn't work because you need to have a package structure. Yeah. You could start hard coding, of course, but once you reach a point, better to improve.
If you've just got a database of items that go in your menu, you can have in the database, you could add the package. So when you set up your database, you'd pull it from the database.
yeah, I will need to add that as well. You're right. The CM First have provide a paid service for, like in this case, I need some help with the Visual Studio and the debugging of the CA Plex, .NET.
I think so. You can book me.
He's the expert. But yeah, just
yeah, for the menu, I have a variable idea for that, like a casting menu, some memory, and so on. So it's probably not something we can do.
I just need to talk to Mark.
Yeah.
O'Brien.
Yep.
So we just allocate some time, and then whatever you need help with. We've got quite a few experts at CM First, so someone in the team will be able to help and spend time on whatever you need to get solved.
Excellent, because if I can get this, then next time that we have a conference, I'll be more than glad to show them.
Well, we look forward to the presentation, yeah. So maybe 18 months time. Hopefully it'll be a physical conference, but we don't know right now.
Right. But I'll be more than glad to show, the steps, because I did it in C++, the click once and everything, where it builds, the app, and I even got it in the customer site working in C++, but C#, I'm having a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, well, it's definitely possible. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, we're pretty much at the end of our 1 hour time slot. So if you want to exit the room and join, I guess next we have lunch. So it's a pit stop.
How long is the lunch, Roger?
I think it's 1 hour.
Wow. All right.
Thank you,
guys. Excellent.
Thank you.
Stop the recording here. Okay.